All right, so I just finished watching Man in the High Castle season 4. Wow, what a ride. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. This is gonna have a ton of spoilers. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk about just everything, not in any particular order. Things I like, things I didn't like, just some of the twists that we saw, and like I said, wow, what a wild ride. So let's just get into it. First thing, it's kind of a filmmaker's way of not having to show everything that took place, but the 1 year later that took place. You know, we saw Juliana fall back into the flower bed, and then Smith and his son picked her up, and next thing you know, we get 1 year later, and then we're seeing kind of it's a Japanese procession because of Tagomi's assassination. But the 1 year later thing. So yeah, we saw that, and then we get to see Wyatt's men. Now, obviously, in that 1 year later, somehow Wyatt ended up with guns and all that kinds of stuff for fighting the Nazis. But that's the drawback to the 1 year later. We don't know how he ended up with that stuff. We don't know how he got it or anything. It's just left up to the assumption is that he was able to procure all these weapons so that they could fight the Nazis. So we see them fighting, and of course they lose. They lose a lot of people. He's about ready to give up, and one of his, I believe it's one of his higher ups, I guess, is able to talk him back into it, and they go meet with the BCR. So, you know, they have that meeting, and they're able to come up with some kind of a plan to try to kill. They're trying to kill 4 leaders in the Japanese Pacific states, and I think they only really managed to get. Well, did they get 3? I think they got 3. I just that was all the way back in the first episode. I just binge watched the whole thing, so I'm kind of trying to remember back. But let's next thing that so yeah, the 1 year later is what I really wanted to hit on. Next thing that I really liked, and I didn't even really notice it until we had spent a lot of time in the alternate world, and then suddenly we were back in the regular world. The color palette that's in John's apartment is there's such a major contrast between that and then the alt world. In the regular world, John's apartment, the colors are they're cold, they're subdued, they're sharp. The blacks are a deep black, the whites are just a cold white. All the colors are kind of washed out, and they're very sharp in the regular world. In fact, even on the cooking show, which had brighter colors, but they were also very sharp. The browns on the cabinets was a very sharp. Helen's green dress, it wasn't necessarily a bright green. It was just a sharp green. And then when we went back to John's apartment, the green was actually subdued and more washed out, just like the rest of the apartment. Whereas in the alternate world, all the colors in the house and in the surroundings, everything's much more vibrant and much more alive. It's almost like it's living. Whereas in the other world where John lives, it's almost like it's dead. Like the colors are dead. You know, like kind of like how John is slowly dying inside. So that was something that I can't believe I just didn't notice it before. But again, we didn't spend a whole lot of time in the alt world until this season. You know, the last time we saw it was when Tagomi went there, and they probably did something similar, and I just didn't even notice it. So I thought that was really cool. The scene where Thomas, after he enlists in the Marines and the Marines come to get him, this scene almost mirrors the way that Thomas was taken away in their world. You know, you got the two officers. They're probably not officers. I don't know how all that works, but you got the two soldiers who they come to the house, and I mean, in this case, they're telling him, you know, he signed the paperwork, you know, he's got to come with us, all this stuff. He's once again voluntarily leaving, and it's almost like an exact mirror of what happened before. The difference is that he's not he doesn't think he's going to go die. He's going off to fight in a war for all he knows, versus the last time it was, I need to make this sacrifice for the Reich, you know. But it was just very I thought it was very interesting. You know, if you're paying attention, you can see the similarities between these two scenes. John is, of course, convinced that he's going to go off to die. We found out, and his concern is probably somewhat valid, because we do see earlier, we do get some background into John's, what I would call defection, where, you know, they were fighting for the U.S. Army. The U.S. lost the war, and now they have a choice, which is they can, in my opinion, it's they can go on the run, or they can join the Nazis. John chooses to join the Nazis. Of course, one of his best friends can't really do that because he's Jewish, and he knows he's going to get hunted down and killed. In fact, he does get hunted down. John sees him one last time before he's taken off in a truck. He's basically boxed in. And we only find out that stuff because John starts to see these people in the alt world, and we get these flashbacks of his memories of his time after the war. So that all kinds of gives us some of a background into what he's been going through for the last, I think Helen says that that it had been 20 years or something like that. Maybe it only been 12 years. I'm not exactly sure the time frame, but we get basically some background into his thought process. In fact, which leads us to eventually to the last episode, where he's been doing this for so long that all he knows how to do now is fight for the Nazis. So he doesn't know how to stop. He doesn't think it's the right thing to do, even when he is given full autonomous control of North America. He still continues to plan out how to conquer the West Coast, because of course the Japanese have pulled out of the Pacific states, are leaving the territory to the BCR. And in fact, it takes John and Helen getting killed for one of John's, I think what I'm going to refer to as his first in command, basically pulling the plug on the plan and saying, you know what, that's it. We're gonna stop this. We're not gonna do this any longer. And that's almost where the show ends. But yeah, so those things I thought were really interesting, showing the background of John's life, of Helen's life, and how they basically, they never really believed these things, but they did it to survive, which I don't think I could do that. You know, if it was me, I would have chosen, I'm gonna run, and it's gonna, what happens is gonna happen, but I'm not gonna sacrifice, I try to put myself in that position. I'm not gonna sacrifice my principles, my beliefs in order to just live longer, because that's really what you're doing. You're living day by day, trying to survive at that point, and trying to make sure that you're continuously following this belief system that you don't really believe in. Anyway, I also, I'm going to skip to the ending for a minute. The ending I thought was weird. I liked it with everyone coming through the portal. I think the assumption is that they're coming through, I think Juliana said from everywhere. My assumption is that they're coming through from the alternate world. But maybe it is just all these different worlds that are connected to it, or connected to them, that they're coming through. I almost felt like it was a Close Encounters of the Third Kind ending where everyone's coming back, but they didn't really focus on anyone. So I'm not really sure I understand the ending. I thought it was neat, but I don't know if I understand it. If anybody out there understands what the point was, other than they're coming from everywhere, feel free to drop some comments below and let me know what you think the ending meant, because that would be super helpful. I also thought it was quite interesting that the Nazis had figured out how to get people through the portal, I guess as quickly. Although I think it had been, yeah, this was the 1 year later thing. But they were basically sending special ops guys through to infiltrate government positions, scientific research facilities, things like that, so that they could sabotage the American defense systems and things like that. The rockets kept crashing, and then the lead nuclear scientist has a heart attack. Juliana obviously recognizes all these things for what they were. She's putting them all together and realizing that these are not accidents. She even realizes that somebody's following her. She almost gets killed. Luckily, the alternate John Smith saves her, ends up getting killed himself, which is what allows the other world John Smith to come through. Which, speaking of that, I thought it was kind of odd. Abenston had told him that only people who either were dead on the other side or never existed could come through. And towards the end of the show, he's telling Helen that he's going to take her to see their son, Thomas. And actually, I think even that, I think what he said was that he was going to bring Thomas through, because I'm watching this and I'm thinking, you can't take her through because she'll die, because there's another Helen on the other side. So she can't go through, obviously, but John can, and he could bring Thomas back. In fact, that's actually what he said. He was going to bring Thomas back, and that's really what led to their final fight. Because she's just like, no, I won't be a party to this. I don't want that version of our son, to see what we have become, because he's now the leader of the Nazis in North America, and she's his wife. And it's like, what, you sacrificed everything that you truly believed in for what? Power? He would be appalled. I mean, we even see that in the alternate Thomas, where when John's telling him, freedom's a joke, it's not worth fighting for, none of this is worth fighting for, and he's just like, what are you talking about? This is completely out of character for his dad. Even though we didn't get to see very much of his dad in the alt world, what we get to see, it's kind of presented through Thomas, and Thomas essentially tells us this is completely out of character for his dad, which it is, because that's not his dad. I really liked how John became the Fuhrer of North America. Maybe I should have seen it coming, but I completely didn't see it coming, how him and that general guy had just totally conspired with a few other people to kill Himmler and that entire group of people that were meeting in Berlin, and how they replaced, I think, they replaced Himmler's oxygen with the Zyklon gas, and that gave them the ability to kill Himmler. That was a twist that I wasn't expecting. I guess I was fully expecting that John would be arrested or something for lack of loyalty. But there was that twist, and then they each agreed, okay, you'll run Europe, and I'll run North America. In fact, it was actually at that point that I was kind of expecting John to go back to New York and then decide that, okay, things are going to be different. Maybe he would stay the leader and there wouldn't be elections or anything like that, but that he would relax the rules and there wouldn't be any more of this master race stuff or, following all these Nazi rules. But he, like I said previously, he just kind of kept going with it. And he tells Helen, like I said, towards the end, he doesn't know how to stop it. So it's like it just became something that he kind of was doing as kind of out of a habit, and it took him dying and then his best friend to finally pull the plug on all of it. So yeah, I really liked the whole season. I thought it was fantastic. I'll probably do a deep dive on each episode after this. But if you haven't seen any of the show, go watch it. If you haven't seen season 4 yet, what are you waiting for? You gotta go watch it. It's amazing. I really like what they did. None of it really felt rushed, I don't think. Although the beating the Japanese seemed to be take a lot longer than I guess beating the Nazis, but they really only had to take out a few Nazi leaders. So I guess that part might have been rushed because that all happened in like the last 2 episodes, and the first, I guess I wouldn't say the first 8 or anything like that, but there's probably 3 or 4 episodes of beating the Japanese and getting them to withdraw. So I would say that took up the lion's share of the season. But I still think it was a great season. I think it's a great show. I'm sorry to see it go, but I don't think they could have kept it going. After all, when they first announced that season 4 was the final season, I was like, oh, that sucks. But I don't think they could have kept it going much longer, because really, that world isn't gonna look the same as our world does, as the alternate world does, and that becomes obvious when the BCR, they don't want to live under the American flag. I was kind of worried that as I can't remember his name, but as he walked away with the flag, I was kind of worried that he was going to be throwing it in the trash can. I'm really glad they didn't do that, because that really would have made me mad. But they didn't do that, thankfully. They didn't want to live under that flag because remember, this is Black Communist Revolution, so they're communists. They don't believe in anything of that flag because, again, I think it was 1963. And from America's founding to that point, they've lived under nothing but oppression. And now they're going to have their own country, or at least their own territory. And that flag, they don't want to live under that flag, because that flag just means oppression to them. So they're going to have their own flag. They're going to have their own area. It would be I think it would be kind of interesting to see how the show could continue, or maybe just how another show might spin off from that one. to see, you know, how it works out, because everywhere communism has been tried, it's failed. um, but that's completely side topic. So yeah. So yeah, the majority of the season was spent kicking the Japanese out, fighting them, getting them to withdraw, and then it was just the last couple episodes really that getting the Nazis out, and that'll probably, I don't know that they'll, I mean, if we kind of take from the end and extend it, it's really, there's going to be a lot of changes, more than just, you know, not attacking those formerly Pacific states, but it would demand a lot of changes to the structure of government, which is perfectly possible. It's just a matter of whether or not the new leader, would do that. So yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed the show. Like I said, I'll probably take a deep dive into each episode after this one. Let me know if you like this video. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you have anything you want to add to this overarching review, go ahead and comment below. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure and hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you get notified of future videos. And we'll see you in the next one.